All right, let's dive into a story about one of the most chaotic moments in the history of data. We're going way back, before modern computers, to a time when booking a simple flight was a wild mess of paper, pencils, and a system that was just about to completely break down. I mean, really think about it. How on earth did anyone book a plane ticket before the internet? We can do it on our phones in, what, 2 minutes? But back then, the entire system was physical, something you could touch, and because of that, it was incredibly fragile. The leap from then to now is just staggering. We went from a process that was completely manual, totally local, and just riddled with errors, to the instant, global, 24/7 system we all take for granted. And, this transformation wasn't just some gradual upgrade. It was born from absolute, desperate necessity. So to really get why this revolution had to happen, we first have to understand just how bad the problem was. And the core of it was this. Airline data wasn't really data, not like we think of it today. It was a collection of actual physical objects. So what were they actually using? Well, just picture an office absolutely buried in giant ledger books, huge walls covered in index cards, and passenger lists all scribbled out by hand. Every single piece of information, every seat on every flight, had a physical spot in that room. It was a huge, huge bottleneck. The whole process was just painfully slow. You'd call a travel agent, and they would literally have to get up, walk over to a giant filing cabinet or a massive ledger for that one flight, and then physically scan the page to see if there was a seat left. Every single booking was this slow, manual, human-powered search. And this is where the system really shows its cracks. It wasn't just about booking the flight. What if you needed to change it? Someone had to go on a hunt for your specific indexed card and physically move it to another slot. And get this, if they couldn't find that one little piece of paper, your reservation was just gone. Poof. The result of all this was, you guessed it, a total disaster. The system was unbelievably slow and full of human errors. Overbooking wasn't even a mistake. It was just how things worked. And can you imagine if a storm canceled a flight? Trying to rebook thousands of people by hand was a logistical nightmare. The entire industry was just hitting a wall hard. So to try and bring some kind of order to this madness, airlines turned to the hot new tech of the time, punched cards. This was really the first attempt to step away from pure manual labor and start moving toward automation. The idea itself was pretty simple, actually. Instead of a handwritten book, every passenger's details were punched into a specific card. Then these huge clanking machines could sort all the cards by flight number, and another machine called a tabulator would print out a final passenger list. It was definitely a step up from doing everything by hand. Okay, so that sounds like a decent solution, right? You're using machines, you're standardizing the data. So was that it? Was the great airline reservation problem finally solved? Oh, not even close. Yeah, it was an improvement over paper for sure, but the punched card system was still fundamentally broken. It was a batch process, trying to solve a problem in a world that was desperately starting to need real-time answers. And here's the fatal flaw. There was no way to get a live look at what was happening. The data was only as good as the last time you ran a whole batch of cards through the sorter. You couldn't make an instant update. And you definitely couldn't ask a simple question like, hey, how many seats are left on the 5 p.m. flight to Chicago right now? Now, this slow, brittle system was about to collide head-on with one of the biggest explosions in travel history, the dawn of the jet age. All of a sudden, flying wasn't just for the super rich. Jets made travel faster and way cheaper, and the number of people flying every year just skyrocketed. This massive wave of new passengers and reservation requests completely overwhelmed the old systems. And it wasn't just more people, it was more complexity. Airlines were flying way more routes to way more cities than ever before. This growing web of connections was becoming impossible to manage with just stacks of physical cards. You can just picture it, right? The demand for air travel, thanks to the new jets, was just shooting through the roof. But the ability of the reservation systems to handle that demand was completely flat. The gap was getting wider every single day. The industry was at an absolute breaking point. The chaos had hit a fever pitch. The airlines finally realized they couldn't just patch up the old system anymore. They needed a total revolution. They needed something that could operate at the speed of their new jet engines. And what they needed, the thing that would change everything, was this: a real-time system. Not a system that tells you how many seats were available yesterday, but one that can tell you how many seats are open right this second as someone is trying to book one. That was the game changer. So this crisis created a brand new wish list. The airlines needed a system that could pull up a reservation in a fraction of a second. It had to be able to grow with their global networks. And it had to be a real foundation for actual automation, not just a fancy way of keeping records. And this desperate need from the airline industry ended up being one of the most powerful forces in the history of computing. The pressure was on to invent something that nobody had ever built before, a system that could manage data in a completely new way. And that is exactly where we're going to pick things up next time. We'll look at the incredible, revolutionary systems that were built to answer this call, the ones that finally dragged the airlines into the modern age of travel. See you then!